Western Spring Television. Ours it is.
Well, thank God it's Friday, and thank God we are all alive to witness this beautiful day, the 10th of February, 2023. My name is Emmanuel Luchadigele, and I welcome you to the TGIF edition of Morning Spring on Western Spring Television, where we bring you conversations as they happen, when they drop, from where they drop, and as it is around the world, around the country, around the state. We're reaching you live from Osogbo, the Osun State capital, on the Start Times 190. Our DTT platform. You can also follow us on all our social media handles on Facebook and Instagram at Western Spring Television, on Twitter at WSTV_NG, and you can search for us on YouTube at Western Spring Television. When you get there, do well to subscribe to our channel. And of course, you can engage all the exciting content that we have put up there for you to catch up with the episodes of your favorite programs that you may have missed. I'm not alone in the studio this morning. I'm with my good morning.
Good morning, people. Welcome to the Morning Spring on Western Spring Television. I am Timothy Jalal.
How's it? It's the end of the week. Are we going out today? Do we have something to?
I'm very excited because at least, we rest from all the troubles, all the queues from the past.
Well, the queues are still very much there. The queues
especially
are
at the
there.
banks.
Yes,
I think it has, sort of went down at the filling stations, but at the banks we still have queues, even as at this morning, long queue.
Well, it's not just the banks, even at the POS, with the POS operators, they also don't have cash to dispense. I almost slept without food last night because there was no POS agent had cash to give me, but my God, the God that I serve works in mysterious ways.
I hope it's not the God of wicked.
He has put Femi Olanipekun to shame once more, over my life. And I want to thank him. Anyway, we'll take our break. Now, when we come back, of course, we'll bring you the newspaper segment before we go into the interviews and spring trends. Do stay with us. All right, welcome back to the show. It's still Morning Spring on Western Spring Television. And interestingly, today is supposed to be the end of the cash swap policy deadline. And as of last night, as you'll find out later in the course of the show, especially on the spring trends, there was a countdown on the CBN website, actually, that showed that the CBN almost had no intention of obeying the Supreme Court order, because as of 11:30 yesterday, there was a 30-minute, count. It had begun earlier in the day, but at that time there was that countdown. It was 30 minutes to midnight, and CBN saying 30 minutes to the end of the cash swap policy.
And I think that's why we're saying that confusion is deep.
Yes, well,
I was wondering why.
Yes, so we'll begin on the Punch newspaper this morning. New Naira, confusion deepens as CBN deadline ends today. Pages 2 and 19. The writer says presidency, CBN silent on Supreme Court ruling. Banks, customers await Emefiele's directive. Buhari's 7-day promise expires. Nigerians queue in vain at ATMs, banking halls. Federal government will comply with Supreme Court ruling as the AGF and TUC threatens to sue government over scarcity. Well, it's interesting that the AGF has said that federal government will comply with the ruling, because he was in the news almost immediately after that ruling, saying that the Supreme Court should review its ruling, and asking that the overturning. But it's good to see him say now that the federal government will comply.
And maybe that's why the presidency and CBN are silent, because it's already obvious that their hands are now tied, and the people too, and the customers, everyone is waiting for the next course of action from the CBN. Yes. And maybe that's why they're silent, because they see that they have no choice now.
Yes,
the Supreme Court has ruled, and many people are being favored by the ruling.
Well, and of course, the president's 7-day request has elapsed. It has expired today, and it shows that the president is yet to give us the final outcome of his meeting. Although today's start meeting with the Council of State, yes, we are waiting Emefiele's directive. That seems to be the only person in this country. I mean, who would have thought that at some point in time, the entirety of the council by one man, you know, Emefiele now want to know what his directives are, if we would direct central bank to comply. But obviously, it's good that the federal government is complying with that ruling.
Yes.
And the TUC is threatening to sue the government. We hope it's not just all talk and all bark and no bite, you know. But below that story, there's a picture of a ghastly accident in Lagos, a fatal one actually. One life was lost. One dies in Lagos Ibadan road crash. Find out more about that story on page 5. Now below, at the bottom strip of the paper, Council reviews training as 14,000 nurses join JAPA training. As on page 13, for those of us who don't know, JAPA is the migration now or immigration or leaving the country syndrome. You know, and just last year we read recently on the papers that about 2,000 doctors left the country in 2022, and now 14,000 nurses have joined the training.
Yes, very disturbing news for the entire nation, because these people are a very integral part of any working system. And if 14 nurses are leaving, that's not to show doctors, 14,000 rather, nurses. Doctors are not involved yet, and other aspects of
professionals.
Yes. And so it's really a disturbing news, and the council that is reviewing, you know, should keep, I don't know, the council reviews training as 14,000 nurses. So maybe there was training, you know, planned for this, for the nursing profession, you know.
Yes, and now then they have to go back to the drawing board.
Yes,
since 14,000.
How many people are left?
But it's paints a dark picture for Nigerians and the health sector, because we are already, let me say, under-doctored, under-nursed, say we are under-policed and all of that. And if you don't have enough in the first instance, and the ones you have are leaving, it means that we are in for some sort of, I don't know the word to use, but the health sector is suffering really for people to be living in their droves, and it will affect those who cannot afford medical tourism, those who cannot afford the exorbitant prices or rates charged by private hospitals. Yeah,
because the fact that they're understaffed now would increase their charge. I think it will, and you know, that will further put strain on the masses.
Well, we hope that something is done soon, and that people also watch out for yourselves, take care of yourselves, at least be the first line of health defense for yourself, so that you don't have to be
with the
victim.
way it's going, we might be the last too.
Yes, we might be the last. Yes, the first and the last. Suspect arrested for killing Ogun couple's son on page 5 of the Punch newspaper. And on page 18, VCs of vice chancellors and ASU disagree as federal government shut universities. The NUC released a circular, asking students to go home
from the 22nd.
Yes, because of the election, and to resume March, I think 15th or thereabout, after the elections. And there's been mixed reactions. Some persons are saying, why do we have to shut down the entire system because of just one day, and some other arguments like that. But then some of the students have their polling units back home, and unfortunately for them, the transfer of PVCs, some didn't do it, for some it didn't work out, and just a whole lot. And some, their parents would want them to be in the safety of the
Yes, I was having that concern too, that I think apart from the fact that you would disenfranchise some of these people, it's also safe to be, with their families at this period. So I don't think it's right for ASU and the VCs to be disagreeing on this particular action. I mean, you should have seen it coming, and you should even expect that it should be done. And I think that they should be raising concerns if it wasn't done in the first place. So disagreeing with this, I mean, when the whole ASU strike thing was up, you said the agitation was for some of the students, the way things were being done, the state of facilities in the schools. You were not having, you were not thinking about the fact that the students were not in school, but now they have to do or perform their civic duty, and you're having a problem with it. I think that's a problem on its own.
Yes, and it's also quite interesting because many of the VCs will be returning officers for INEC, and so it means that they will also be away from their administrative duties. So it's also important that some of these issues are ironed out. But I get that we also need to grow to a point where some of these teething problems are solved. The students should be able to vote wherever they are by transferring their PVCs. We don't have to shut down the economy, But because of the security risk, we understand that Nigeria is it's a different continent on its own within another continent. Different things happen. But away from that story, above the nameplate of the paper, Buhari orders setting up transition panel on Valentine's Day. You get that story on page 18. Like we said, so like the president has said, is very much concerned about leaving office, in one piece, and almost very eager to leave office. And you wonder why that is. But then a panel that will help whoever their incoming administration will be, whatever party, whatever demography or constitution, this will help them to interface properly before a winner will be declared 26th, 27th. You have a couple of months before May, or even before May, yes. You have February, you have March, April. 2 months is enough for them to converse and set up some things. So it's a commendable one from President Bubu. We hope that he puts such fervor into ensuring that his last days in office are not marked by so much hardship that could have been averted. Well, on page 12 of the Punch newspaper, federal government sanctions 302 broadcast stations, issues 67 new licenses.
Now, for one, I'm quite impressed and glad that our station is not one of them.
Oh, yes, of course. Due to the fiery nature of some interviews that we've had both on TV and radio, well, it speaks to the level of professionalism and ensuring that you're also always on the safe side of the law.
Yes, and the things are being done properly.
Yes. Well, on page 19, government vows penalty for failed marketers rejecting POS transfers. This is something that must be addressed.
Yes, immediately too.
It has to be addressed. People have no other option than to use transfers. That's the essence in the first place. But they can't. It's either your transfers are not going, or they're being reversed, or you don't get a lot. It's just some problematic thing, one problematic thing or the other.
So
and the
for this to work properly, the foundation problems should be solved.
Well, the last story says, we live in fear as earthquake death top 20,000. Kentucky-based footballer Babajide was on pages 8 and 30. Thought and prayers with those in Turkey, Syria, and Lebanon.
It's quite alarming now. From a very
just 2,000 now to 20,000,
and it's still counting, unfortunately, because we still have people trapped, and their chances now is dwindling by the day.
Yes, and it's also worrisome that Christian Atsu, the Ghanaian footballer who was said to have been rescued, his club has come out to say that that was wrong information. Is still under the rubble. That they've not found him. One other footballer has been found, a goalkeeper, I can't remember the name of the club now, but he was found dead, at the age of 28. We can only hope that somehow Christian Atsu, another person still trapped, are found alive. But that's all on the Punch newspaper this morning, David.
All right, moving on quickly from the Punch to the Daily Trust. And we have the banner headline says, Naira crisis, food traders count losses, slash prices of wares, then the riders, POS operators close shops, experts dissect situation, FG official lauds development. Emefiele INEC chair brief Council of State today. And it's also alarming that food traders and other traders, in fact, but it's emphatic here that food traders are counting their losses.
And yet they're also slashing the prices
of their wares.
They're forced to. So running at loss because, of course, there isn't any cash to do business with. POS operators, they don't have money.
Exactly.
And it's everywhere. It's really everywhere. Right here in Oshobo, I went to about 5 persons, 5 POS operators. They didn't have money. How I got money was that one of my, favorite customers I had to speak with her. Okay, give me this certain amount from the cash you have. I'll transfer to you. That was how I got money, because the POS operators themselves did not have money, you know. And the federal government is I don't know. I really don't know what's happening with the government. This is the fruit of ill thought policies. When you do first before you think and assess, you run the risk of putting yourself in a very tight corner, boxing yourself into a tight corner, such as this, where people are now beginning to run at loss. It wasn't long ago we read that some persons were already trading in foreign currency on Nigerian soil, the border communities, you know. And so this now is sad for the food sellers, the food traders. But then there's food now, there's no money to buy it. That's how it is.
Yes, there's food, and but there's food that's for the people, those who want to buy. But then the food sellers themselves, they're recording losses on spoilage of their foods now, and then the fact that they have to slash, so they're losing on different sides, exactly. But let's see what the outcome of the meeting of the Council of State will be today.
Yes, we'll wait to see.
We only hope that it brings about positive development to all of this crisis. But then moving away from that to the bottom strip of the paper, Buhari constitutes Transition Council, like we said on the Punch newspaper. That's more of that news is on page 6. Then Obasanjo faults appointments of former IGPs as PSC chairman, and page 6. I think he was saying something about military heads, heading some of this institutions and all. Yes,
and considering the fact that there's always been a running battle between the PSC and the office of the IGPs, it's somehow dicey to now use them as heads of the PSC, that's Police Service Commission. Yeah. But then sometimes it's actually competence and efficiency.
I was about saying that I think it should be faulting that now on the level of competence.
Okay, yeah. So on that story, Obasanjo apparently was asking that there could be civilian heads, or the members of the committee could head that PSC, which is actually Obasanjo has his position, he has his reasons, but I also want to see reasons with him, especially because of what I said about the IGPs and the PSC having running battles, and also it will be reasonable to have a change of guard, have someone who is competent but not necessarily an IGP head the commission.
Atiku in Kano fails to hand flag to parallel governorship candidates. More of that too is on page 12. And 2 arraigned for flogging traditional ruler. That's page 14.
Very funny story.
Very funny, very sad. Uphold our traditional culture, and we have people flogging them. That's very sad. I hope it doesn't happen again.
Well, it also speaks to the fact that we've denigrated the traditional stool, so badly that traditional rulers, they themselves are also culpable.
Yes.
Some of their actions, some of their words. The most recent issue is the Oyinoi of Ebira land and Yaya Bello of Kogi State going back and forth about you should have welcomed the president. Your reply was not official. All of these things water down the sanctity of the traditional institutions.
Yes. All right, just below the nameplate, Naira swap cashless policy may affect troops. That's the NSA.
I think he had raised it before. Someone else raised the alarm or pointed out that there are some troops who are still inside forest, who may be in possession of old notes, who may have no idea. They may have an idea, but by the time they come out, there's difficulty for them to exchange cash and all of that. But of course, it will cut across
everyone. If people who are even in the cities, are having issues, are having problems, we shouldn't be talking about the troops that may be far away. they'll surely have problems. It's important that this meeting that we hold today solves a lot.
Yes.
I've campaigned in over 500 local government areas, Kwankwaso. That's what it says, and it's on page 13 of the Daily Trust. NUC directs varsities to close for elections. Yes, we've talked about that too, and we've said it's a step in the right direction. Although we should put up better strategies to have these people vote wherever they are.
Yes. Well,
that's all on the Daily Trust.
All right, from the Daily Trust, quickly we move over to the Nation newspaper this morning. The Nation newspaper says more banks close branches for lack of cash to pay customers. Cash crunch bites harder. NSA's scarcity affecting military operations. Banks are closing now not for security issues, but because they simply don't have cash to pay customers. Interesting times in this country, I tell you. Babagana Mongono there saying that the scarcity will affect military operations, of course, just like every other sector, like every other area of our lives as Nigerians. You expect the military also to be affected. SAN, CBN must obey Supreme Court ruling. That's what the senior lawyers are saying. The Central Bank of Nigeria is bound by the Supreme Court's interim injunction restraining the federal government from enforcing today's deadline to end the use of old naira notes.
It's important to do so, just for the people.
Now the bottom strip of the Nation newspaper. Varsities to close from February 22nd. EFCC appeals contempt ruling on bar. Page 6. Well, the EFCC chairman has been going in and out of this controversy of contempt of court. I think this is the second or third time that he will be committed to prison for contempt. And I read a statement from Femi Falana talking about how you can't be enforcing the law and then holding the rest of the law of the judiciary in contempt. And I think that also has to stop. You know, it's not the only one. The IGP too, I think, has had that issue recently. People having issues with contempt and not obeying court orders, and it just has to stop. You know, there has to be some respect for the judiciary. We understand that there are some dynamics and intricacies, but then those things should not deter us something was right about upholding the values of all our systems. Well, above the nameplate of the Nation newspaper this morning, over 20,000 dead in Turkey, Syria earthquakes, page 28. And NDIC set to pay 30 failed banks depositors on page 7 of the Nation newspaper this morning. Yes,
and we can see the transition committee that was set up by the president just below the nameplate. Boss Mustafa heads presidential transition committee.
I think that's Tinubu campaign in Lagos. We'll get to see the full names of the committee members on page 6 of the Nation newspaper.
Yeah. All right, moving on quickly from the Nation newspaper to the Guardian now. We have the banner headline as Buhari prepares for May 29, sets up transition committee. Then the riders gives 2 slots to successor. 2023 elections. FG orders closure of varsities for 3 weeks. Lecturers will swear to oath of neutrality, says INEC. INEC laments 1,241 pre-election suits, 6 pro bono service from NBA. Well,
it's interesting.
It's interesting.
INEC wants free services from the NBA. Well, I'm sure there are some lawyers who would volunteer to do that, who want to do that.
Yes.
And of course, they are within their rights to do that. Lecturers who swear to oath of neutrality, they should do that.
Yes.
Now, it begs the question, the lecturers are on election duty and the students are allowed to remain in school.
Just like
well, it's a Saturday anyway, so there may be no activities. Yes. But then pre-election, they will be involved. You know, 1 or 2 days before the D-Day itself, and then also after.
They would also need to travel.
It just stands to reason, yes.
So it's very important that these people go, back home to also, have their own civic responsibilities performed. All right, just below that, cancer dealing with high incidence, cost of containment. We've had fears You know, we've had I think WHO now saying that there's a high risk of cancer in, this year and, forward. And then we have a problem in Nigeria with the medical profession now, with the medical, associations, with doctors leaving, with nurses as well, and other medical practitioners.
Yes, and the lack of cancer research centers and facilities.
Yes.
It's all a whole big pot of worry for Nigerians.
All right, Falana tasks CBN to obey Supreme Court's export order. And that news is on page 6. And just below the nameplates, Naira full scarcity, TEC on alert. Youths begin 14-day nationwide protest.
We didn't see that coming. 14-day nationwide protest.
And that's going to, because we have a countdown here, 15 days left.
Yes.
So that if they start today, that means that would leave a day to the election.
Well, let's see if it will be a nationwide protest or just pockets of protests.
All right. Town planners seek stiffer penalty for building collapse offenders. I think that's very important to be done. That news is on page 7, because we have developers who are not following, the plan of the buildings. So it's very important to have stiff penalties for offenders in this line. Just quickly on page 15, full crisis, NMDPRA, Ipman agreed to 172 naira ex depot price. It was yesterday that they were saying that that the other price now, I think, was not going to work, and now they are agreeing to 172 naira this time around. All right, just quickly on page 27, gunmen ambush kill 4 military officers in Delta. Gunmen ambush kill 4 military officers in Delta. We still have many of our military officers being killed, and we hope that they can be well equipped and well informed too, for their own protection as well.
Well, we hope so. It's sad to see that our military, men of our military, of the forces, are being ambushed and killed just like that, and we hope that they are secure and that they are safe, and that this killing stop across the country, and not just the military, the police, to whoever the person involved in securing Nigeria. We hope that Nigerians stop killing them, and that there's so much peace in the land. Well, that's where we leave it at the papers this morning. We'll now go over on a break, and when we come back, we'll be bringing our guest for the first leg of the interview segment to stay with us.
Arrested, affected, sound, found. What do we see? What do we say? Flowing from a spring. A fact A to Z. Check and confirm. Ever expounding current events. Traveling down from the business gist to the globally arising happenings, to the sports news, to the bittersweet infos. Guided transmission, even diffusion, vast and fast, detailed facts are fled. Within seconds, nuggets of words that flew across borders are fired. Stories short and long, wrapped in bundles of words, broken and dissected as it is, except misheard. This is the news as it is.
Sports is a culture on its own. It has its own language, its own people, with their own way of life. The world of sports is never void of actions, stories, dramas, and scandals. I guess you need a sports show that can walk the walk and talk the talk.
On this show, we answer all your sporting questions. The whens, the whys, the wheres, and even the what ifs. Sports Spring is that show that will give you that new lease of life you've been looking for in sport journalism. Join me, Joseph Atewe,
And your sports Amazon, Nengi Ernest.
on this station, Western Spring Television, channel 190, only on Star Times.
Let's talk sports. Let's
All right, welcome back to the show, Morning Spring on Western Spring Television. It's time to bring you the interview segment of the show. And we have with us in the studio Mr. Shola, who is the media assistant to Governor Ademola Adeleke of Osun State on ICT. Thank you so much for joining us on the show this morning.
Good morning, Emmanuel. Thank you for having me.
joining us.
Good morning.
Well, let's go straight to business. Let's take a look at the administration of Governor Ademola Adeleke.
Okay.
You know, when he was inaugurated, he gave a very long speech, and the 24th item, on that speech was talking about ICTs and how he was going to use ICT. Let me read it out. The administration will collaborate with development partners to address problems of environmental pollution and climate change. It will equally promote digital literacy, tech innovations, and create opportunities for teaming youths in the ICT sector. So far, so good. How well and how far has the administration gone on fulfilling that promise?
Okay. Good morning once again, and thank you for having me. You see, currently in the old world, the new word currency is ICT. ICT is practically applicable to every sector. So any government, any serious government, would take ICT as its priority because you can use it to drive every sector and drive it effectively. It helps to control every system so that you can manage the efficiency. So when this government came on, some of the things that we discussed as at the time it was coming on was how we can reposition the state, reposition it globally in terms of ICT, because we are trying to align with the global standard practice. We can't just come up with our own ideas because ICT is globally acceptable. So there are standard practices that we need to align with. Even in Nigeria, there are policies that are in other states that are in Nigeria that Osun doesn't have. For instance, Osun does not have an ICT policy. Osun does not have a science, technology, and innovation policy. Osun does not have a startup act. So all of these things were things that we thought about, and we thought, okay, we could consider these things. And then we thought about empowering the youths. I mean, currently in the world, everybody's driving towards ICT. So we thought about, instead of doing empowerment and we're buying wheelbarrow for people, let's train them. That's why we came up with the idea of digital literacy, so that we can have people work in Nigeria and in foreign currencies, and together we develop the states.
Well, so far, how much of progress has been made on that, considering some of the foundational issues that need to be sorted out before you can embark on such a project? Okay.
So when I started, I was talking about how a serious government needs to take ICT. I mean, we'll take ICT up. And one of the things that I'm glad about is the fact that when we're planning the 100 days agenda of the governor, he allowed us to insert ICT. I mean, because we had to, you would think that it would take time to launch such an idea. So while we discussed it, it was just like, okay, let's have it drawn even within the first 100 days. So we started working on the policies. All these policies that I mentioned as at today is at 80% completion. In fact, from the 14th of February, we'll start a validation exercise by inviting stakeholders from across the state, the country, to come and see the policies. These policies, they would review, they will have the opportunity to review the policy. Then we'll do a town hall meeting for the entire state, I mean, stakeholders within the state and within the circle of the concerned partners to come and see these policies before we present to the governor for final assent. On the Startup Act, we are already almost at 80% as well, because the governor has to review before presenting to the House of Assembly. It's a hacked. It's going to be hacked when finally assented. So it's not something we can just sign on. It has to be passed as a law. I mean, at the House of Assembly. So the third of it, which I have not really mentioned, is the fact that we thought about the online presence of our communities, because there is this popular saying by those of us who study communication that the world is a global village. And I said in one of my shows recently that if the world is a global village, then we don't have rural areas anymore. What it means is everybody can be connected wherever you are in the world. And so if we're considering that, there are towns, cities, there are streets and names of areas that you might not find if you're trying to search using Google. So we decided to run a project that would help us to register names of places, businesses, communities, cities, landmarks across the state. So we called for volunteers to run the Google mapping project, and that's what we're currently working on. As I'm talking to you now, we have over 2,000 volunteers who we have trained, who are going about registering places, names of communities, and of course we're still open to getting as many volunteers as possible.
All right. My question now would be that seeing as Google Map could have got this done on its own, they were doing that before now.
So
what's the involvement of the government, with this?
Google wasn't doing it itself. At no point was Google doing it itself, because they don't know us like we can know ourselves. I have been a volunteer with Google on mapping projects for about 5 years now, personally on my own. So what we thought about was, what we are doing is not like we created a system that would add to the map. It's still Google Map are using. There's a platform on Google Map that is called Google Local Guide. So we're registering people as local guiders on the map. It's a volunteer program of Google itself. So what we're only doing is enlightening the people to know about it so that they can participate in improving the presence of their own area. What it helps is, for instance, people who are into logistics business, they will understand that if you are in your house and you order a product, it is possible that a rider bringing your product misses his way because there are streets that lead to your area that is not on the map. So we are trying to, it's going to help to grow businesses. That's what I'm trying to say. So it's not like we created a new system. It's a system of Google. We're only helping to improve what we have for the state.
So how well has that gone, over this period?
Yes, so we like I said, we have over 2,000 volunteers, and when we are managing people, the performances will be different. So out of those 2,000, I can tell you categorically that we have over 600 of them that are actively doing what we're asking them to do. So, and we are giving them a target of doing 50 landmarks a day. So we are getting reports that will finally accumulate to present a total, summary of what we have done on the 6th of March, when the governor will be finally doing this 100 days program unveiling.
Okay, so let me take you up on that Google thing now. How much of Osun has been covered so far, the part of Osun that's been covered?
So at this point, I'm not going to tell you this is the current percentage, because we're still working on it. But by the time we were starting on the 28th of November, what we discovered, I read in one report, was about 30% as at that time. So what it means is, even in Osogbo, there are streets you would go on Google and not find there. Yeah, so that was the percentage at the time we were starting. As at the time we had continued, we have a partner who have a partnership with Google, as they call them reviewers, and what they do is that whatever it is that we had as volunteers, they are the one that confirms it. So we are working with them so we can get a total report of, okay, maybe the percentage we even got in the beginning was not right, but they will be the one that would give us the final report of percentage by the time we are presenting our final report.
Oh, okay. So about the Startup Act, let's go back now.
Yeah.
What exactly is it about, and how will it be of benefit to the people? Osun is not really much of an innovation hub or
that's what an
ICT hub. So what is the act about itself, and how is it going to be beneficial?
Okay, you would remember that there was a time in Nigeria when there was a wave of people into Bitcoin, and everybody was almost doing it. And then one of those days, CBN just came, and only one instruction, that's a growing sector, you would want to describe it at that time, died. well, maybe did not die, but anybody doing that right now would seem to be doing an illegal business. So what we are trying to do is to provide an enabling law for anybody that wants to do a business that is internet ICT related. It gives power for you to practice whatever it is you want to do within the state. What it means is if anybody takes you to court or you have an issue, there is a law that backs it up. It's not just that you are registered with the Corporate Affairs Commission. There's also a law within the state that enables you to do your business.
So the business now you're talking about, how are you going to ensure that they are legal? Because people can be phony, they can be shady to hide under this kind of act, for example, and say I run an online business, and there's a sub business underneath. That is there any sort of monitoring provisions? Yeah.
So what we're planning to do is to have digital clubs. We're going to have digital clubs, tech clubs across the state, in secondary schools, in primary schools, in tertiary institutions. Because you see, when we train people to do things, they know, for instance, in the ICT business, if you are doing something legal, you would even make money. So I don't know why you would go do the illegal when already doing the legal business, you're making a lot of money. That does not also mean that we will not have 1 or 2 persons who will be interested in, but we're going to have monitoring. So beyond that, we are doing ICT. Well, we would have people registered. So many of the people that would be doing this or registering their businesses with the state government and all of those things would be people from the digital clubs. We would have a recommendation from our clubs through the Ministry of Science and Tech. We would have a recommendation from our tech clubs, our digital hubs, so that we know who we are registering for any business within the state.
But still before my colleague comes in, still in line with that, have you given thought to the fact that before this act, fraud has always been on the rise?
So because apart from the fact that we would have all these things running and all those things, there's going to be a task force. That would be, well, I'm not going to preempt the governor, but I'm aware that there's going to be a ICT task force that's going to do all this monitoring that I've been mentioning. It's their job to do the monitoring, to do measure the effectiveness and ensure control. It's going to be their job. So the task force thing is still upcoming. That's why I'm a bit silent about it. But there's going to be a task force that will do all this monitoring thing I'm talking about.
All right. In all of those policies, does Osun State have a database? Is it updated? Does it have the number of people living, working in the state, what they do, where they live, and all of that?
So this question you're asking is a question of Nigeria, because if I'm going to throw it back to you, I'll ask if Nigeria even have a database. But that does not mean that Osun does not have a record. I'm using the word record because I would say still at this point analog. So we have these things, but it's very much analog, and that's why we're trying to improve, or that's what we are trying to improve on. There are records of people, records of houses, records of, so for instance, as regards the mapping thing, we're going to be working with the Ministry of Lands because we want to have the names of all the streets in Osun State, and they had the one who has it. Unfortunately, it is analog. So that's what we're trying to improve. There are records that we would update and make sure it becomes a database eventually. Because
you said there will be task force.
Yes.
To ensure that none of this translates to fraudulent activities. So it's important, isn't it, to have a record of
it is, and we are going to do that. I can assure you. We're going to do that.
All right. So to drive this project now, there's need for infrastructure. If you must say, because there are no tech hubs, there is no equivalent.
Most of them are private.
Yes, most of them are private. There's no Silicon Valley kind of design in Osun State. Will the government be looking into infrastructural development?
Yeah, so the government is looking into infrastructural development, and we're pulling resources from outside the states, from across the nation. who are indigenes of Osun State, who are already experts in the ICT world, big guys in the ICT world. Today we have gotten about 20 of them who would work eventually with the task force to ensure that we have resources. One good thing about ICT is that government does not even need to really spend its own money in ICT. There are companies, for instance, like Google. For instance, our partner on the mapping project has a project with Google that Google is funding for about $1.5 million. So what many of these foreign agencies want to see in our part is readiness, and they are willing to support. For instance, there is a project in Ile-Igbo that is a digital literacy center built by the National Information Technology Development Authority, NIDA, free of charge for the state. So what we are trying to show the world, show the Nigerian government, is our readiness. These infrastructures, it does not mean that Osun or the state government will not take it up, but I'm telling you that we're going to be able to pool resources that is not even our own, because if you ask me, Osun is not really buoyant. But if you ask me, we can reach many of these foreign agencies. When they see our readiness, they'll be willing to partner with us and give us all these facilities you're talking about, so that our tech hubs and tech clubs can have a space of their own from which they would function.
Well, also talking about digital literacy now.
Yeah.
The digital literacy level, especially in Osun State,
it's quite low. Yeah.
is not very much encouraging.
Yeah.
And are there plans to find a way to insert, because I believe it's a long-term project,
It is, yeah.
to insert this into the curriculum of the state? Are you partnering with Education Ministry or any other ministry that would inject digital literacy into the academic sector?
So in that ICT policy that I mentioned earlier, there is what we have. There are segments. For instance, there is ICT and education. There is ICT and agriculture. There is ICT and the youth. So there are all of those things in the policy. But if you ask me on my personal opinion is we don't need to make ICT a curriculum, because what will happen to ICT is that we're going to turn it into theory, and ICT is not theory. Many of us who studied in universities, polytechnics, only went there to study theory. The practical aspect of it is not really well open to us while we were in school. We got to the field before we realized, oh, what I'm even taught in class is not what is happening here. So we have plans of taking ICT into schools, but not in a conventional way, that it will become theory. We don't want people who don't know ICT to teach people ICT. We want experts to manage it. So that's why we're using the method of clubs, because what we are going to do with those clubs is that experts would be their coach. Instead of having a teacher come into the class and using white marker to teach people what is supposed to be done on a system. So we would take it to schools, but I don't think that we would use curriculum, because it's not going to be effective. It's going to turn people to theory experts, and we don't want theory experts. It doesn't drive solutions. ICT is solution driven.
So what's the projection of the Adeleke government
In terms of ICT?
Yeah, so
Okay.
what are you looking at, and if and when this is implemented, how soon will it begin to, turn around the fortunes of the state, and how would it impact the state? How soon will people begin to reap the reward? Also, in terms of the economy, how does it drive up IGR and every other fiscal angle to this?
I'm going to try to give a simple narrative to how it's going to help to drive our IGR and all those things. One of the things that is happening in the world right now after COVID is remote jobs and hybrid jobs. So fortunately, many of these guys in ICT are doing remote jobs and hybrid jobs. So if we have trained people, for instance, we have trained 1,000 people, and our target actually is 10,000. But if
across the
state, 1,000 for instance, and we have 1,000 of them living in Osogbo, for instance, and maybe they are earning, let's say, $5,000 per month or thereabout. You know what it means. They'll spend that money here. They have a better living standard, and it's going to eventually roll around, because they have people that are depending on them, and that money stays here because they are living here. They wouldn't even need to relocate because their job does not require it. Take it or leave it, Osun has one of the best electricity in the country, so that helps them to work effectively wherever they are. So it's going to improve our IGR because we are going to have, what we're raising is not only ICT experts.
I would like to legitimate millionaires.
Legitimate millionaires, of course.
Okay,
yeah.
so let's part of the statements that the governor made, Governor Adeleke made when he visited the House of Assembly, was that he was going to continue some project of the past administration that he finds in the interest of the people.
Yes.
So in this area now, the area of tech, are there any policies, any spillover from the previous administration that the Adeleke will be, taking over, particularly the OES Tech, some of the people who were sponsored, that left the country, the shores of the country. Would that be something that will be continued, or there's a deviation from that plan?
If you see, personally, I took a look at some of these things that we described as empowerment in the past. And so, for instance, in the OES Tech thing, up till this present moment I'm talking to you now, I've not been able to understand what exactly they did. And this is not politics. I'm still finding it difficult because if we have, that project was done, I'm not there when they did it, but I thought they would do it with the Ministry of Science and Technology. So if they had done it with the ministry, what it means is that the ministry is supposed to have a pool of experts who are tech experts from their training programs that they had done in the past. Up till this moment, we don't have any. So whilst it sounds nice to the hearing that there was a project that affects technology, it's also sad that we don't even know who these experts that they have trained are up to this moment. So, of course, I would personally take it up to make sure that I go find out more. I've been asking questions anyway. I've not gotten an answer. But so I will go more into this to figure out where those guys are. But up till this moment, we don't know any of those guys who were trained in tech. And then let me say that, you see, tech is growing. Technology is growing. At a point in time, we don't have artificial intelligence. We have it now. There is now Internet of Things. There is this chat GPT is changing quite a number of things. So tech is no longer teaching people how to repair laptop. Of course that works, but that's like the lowest level of technology. That's hardware. So maybe my assumption, personally, maybe that was what they did as tech, but I would find out and I'll get back to you.
Right.
Honestly, I don't know them.
You're going to be training 10,000
yes,
people.
Yes.
All right. What's the demography? I mean, and how do you plan on carrying this out effectively? Is it going to be in batches? It's
going to be in batches, definitely. We can't do 10,000 at once. It's not going to be effective. But you see, the good thing is that we are going to spread it across the states. So it gives us the opportunity to have everybody involved. However, tech is not limiting. There's no age limits to tech. Anybody can be trained. There is no gender sensitivity in tech. Anybody can be a tech expert. Even the blind can be a tech expert because there are things that they can do, to earn a better living for themselves. So there is no discrimination whatsoever. There is no, anybody that is willing and interested can be trained in technology. So there's no requirement, so to speak, but we just need, what's the basic requirement is readiness. I know of a young man in Lagos who only has a secondary school certificate. What the guy is earning per month, I don't earn. I'm challenging the young man to still go to the university. He doesn't see the need to, because already what he knows, I don't know. So there's no limit to tech. Anybody can be trained.
So we spoke about the hubs and centers earlier. Who are your partners? Are you working with any hubs outside Osun State? Particularly, some institutions already have hubs. Some provided by some service providers. Like the one in Yaba Tech. Are you making any plans to partner with them?
We're making plans to partner. Yes. So we have, for instance, we've contacted Cisco, that networking agency, so that they can help us with some trainings. I've contacted Google as well. So what we're trying to do is to first of all identify individuals who are already into the business in Osun State, who have hubs. Like I said earlier, there are hubs. I know of 2 in Ife. I know of 1 in Iwo. There are about 3 of them in Osogbo. So we're identifying those guys first. we want to have them together in a group so that when the new guys come, they would already know that there are people that they met on ground that they can work together with. So we're identifying them across the states. What we are trying to do is to make sure that everything starts here and ends here. So while we're partnering with people from outside the state, we are going to be bringing them down here, not we going to them. That's our target.
All right. But how about, I know you've talked about, taking it to schools and all of that.
Okay.
Well, let's look at the constitution of the schools in Osun State, for example. Do you have plans of integrating? You talked about clubs and hubs. Will secondary schools, for instance, have their own hubs or their own clubs? Are you taking it to them?
Normally, an appropriate secondary school should have one. I mean, without even this government intervention. An appropriate secondary school is supposed to have a computer laboratory and a hub. But these days, I mean, using the word laboratory is even moribund. People don't talk about laboratories anymore. In a school, it is a digital club or a tech hub. Sorry. And so, for instance, in the 100 days plan of the governor, where you would see a part of it that affects secondary schools. I mean, schools, renovation of schools. And if you read it to the end, you will see that a part of it is that we're not only going to paint it or rebuild it, we're also going to equip it. One of those things that we're going to do, equipping it, is putting in there a tech hub. And so we are going to start, they are doing 30 in the 100 days. So it tells that it's in phases. We'll do, after this 30, there'll be another one. I don't know the number yet, but there'll be another one because it's going to be in phases. So we're going to have, instead of having computer laboratories where you just see computers that are not working, it's going to be a tech hub that's going to be in our schools, secondary schools, primary schools, and we're going to have people managing it who are not ignorant of what they're managing.
Oh, all right.
Because you've spoken about not wanting to make this, theoretical now.
Yeah.
So what's the plan towards that? If you are building tech hubs, if you're erecting tech hubs, what's the plan to have experts in those, tech 30 tech hubs?
So that's why I said we're identifying people who already have hubs. Because our idea is would partner with them to act as mentors and coaches in those hubs that we're going to be building across the state, so that they are the ones that will train other people. And that's why also our digital literacy program is focused in that direction, so that those guys that we have trained are the ones that are going to have to work with the government as mentors and coaches in those hubs, so that whoever is interested in learning would not be discouraged by who is teaching them. And so, for secondary schools, we don't even need them to show interest. We are going to open them up to the opportunities that's available that will drive their interest. Because, for instance, anybody in this age, a 10-year, 11-year-old child might not really have it together, especially if on the background where he's coming from, there are issues. But when we open them up to the opportunities and the available resources, we are going to create in them an interest that would open them up to the ICT.
All right. So just before we let you go, can you just give us a rundown of, I understand there's a 6.6 day, is it not 6 days now, but broken into 6 parts of the implementation of the digital, the innovation and digital economic policy. Can you give us so
specifically, because it has to do with dates, I would have to check my own phone. I have it on my phone. I know we're starting, like I said, on the 14th of February with the validation exercise for our policies. And so stakeholders consultation for ICT policy and state innovation policy, that one is on the 14th of February. Stakeholders consultation and on domestication of the Nigerian Startup Act. So the Startup Act is a national act. So we're domesticating it for Osun State, and it's going to be named Osun State Startup Act. So that's also on the 15th of February. The validation workshop for the policies, those 2 policies, ICT policy and the innovation policy, is on the 23rd of February. The validation workshop for the Startup Act is on the 1st of March. For the Google mapping project, we're doing an accelerated system, and that's why I mentioned them registering 50 landmarks. We started yesterday, 8th of February. on the 6th of March, we're going to have a public event that will be chaired by the governor. And that's where we are going to do the unveiling of the Osun State ICT policy. That's why we're going to do the unveiling of the Osun State Tech Innovation Policy. And then we'll present our own Google Mapping report. And then we inaugurate Osun Technology Innovation and Digital Economy Advisory Board. That board is those 15 people I said we have identified who are tech experts across the world, but are indigenous of the state. And then we're going to have the inauguration. So we're going to also have the governor signing the letter that will present the bill, the Startup Act, to the House of Assembly, also on the 6th of March. So that's a rundown of our events going forward.
All right, well, that's where we'll leave the conversation this morning. We've been speaking with Mr. Shola Ishola, who is the media assistant to Governor Ademola Adeleke of Osun State on ICT. We've been talking about some of the governor's plans as promised in his inaugural speech for digital literacy, innovation, technology, and the digital economy, especially here in Osun State where he governs. So thank you so much for joining us on the show this morning.
Thank you for having me.
All right. Well, that's the first leg of the interview. When we come back, we'll bring you the second leg of the interview. To stay with us.
Sports is a culture on its own. It has its own language, its own people, with their own way of life. The world of sports is never void of actions, stories, dramas, and scandals. I guess you need a sports show that can walk the walk and talk the talk.
On this show, we answer all your sporting questions. The whens, the whys, the wheres, and even the what ifs. Sports Spring is that show that will give you that new lease of life you've been looking for in sport journalism. Join me, Joseph Atewe,
And your sports Amazon, Nengi Ernest.
on this station, Western Spring Television, channel 190, only on Star Times.
Let's talk sports. Let's speak the most universal language of the world.
Evelyn Ohiole,
Hi.
King Eve. How are you today?
I'm good, I'm fine, I'm alive.
I really feel like she's not giving the right answer to the question. When one asks you, how are you? And you said, you're saying, I'm alive. It's very annoying, seriously. How are you? I'm fine. I feel I'm fine would be the right answer instead of I'm alive. Not that I asked you if you're dead before.
Go and check all these 14-year-old, 15-year-old, 16-year-old, everybody, they are extraordinarily sexually active.
I feel is being unnecessarily hyper when it comes to the issue of sex, because we talk about other topics and it feels so reserved. It really doesn't have anything much to say when it comes to other stuff. But when it's the issue of sex, I believe he's being unnecessarily hyper. That's when I have to pick an issue with him. I mean, it's just being unnecessarily there when we're talking about sex. Just like a child, his mom just got him his favorite chocolate or ice cream, very happy, doing as though he doesn't have sex for a day, he's going to die.
When it comes to finance, women also support their husbands financially. You need me emotionally. You need me spiritually.
Cassie is an amazing person, but I hate the too much attachment to that gender. I need you spiritually, I need you mentally. I can't.
All right, thank you so much for joining us and for sticking with us on Morning Spring on Western Spring Television. It's time for the second leg of the interview segment, and we're looking at the general elections that will be occurring in about 15 days or thereabout. And we want to look at the preparedness of the agency, the body saddled with the conduct of the election as well as other issues surrounding the election. We're now joined live on Zoom by the Executive Director of Kimpact Development Initiative, Mr. Bukola Idowu, who joins us live on the line. Good morning, Mr. Idowu.
Good morning. Thank you for having me.
All right. Thank you for joining us. Well, your body recently released a report on elections, starting from, some of the incidents in 2022. Mind taking us through that report and some of the key points of that report? As I recall it, there were 339 incidents of election violence in 2022. So could you give us a rundown of some of the issues, some of the incidents that you've identified in the build-up of to this election?
Thank you very much. I think our reports, the pre-election environment assessment reports, highlight a lot of the issues around the preparation towards the elections. So we look at about 4 major areas, which in terms of number one, the electorate look at INEC preparedness, look at political party preparedness, and then we also look at the judiciary, and then lastly the security agencies. And again, what we try to do again with all of these components we assess was to also play scenarios and see how we can mitigate against some of these unforeseen circumstances. Number one, in terms of the things we assess was the aspect of the electoral statistics. So we have been able to look at the data, what the data is saying concerning the 2023 election. Number one is the aspect of the polling unit. You will recall that the INEC has added just over 56,000 new polling units to the polling unit we had since 1999, and this is the first time we'll be having polling units in the country since we returned to democracy in 1999. So what it means is that we are going into the election with over 176,846 polling units. So what we have done in that report is to disaggregate this polling unit, and our concern and our worry is that we still have over 200 polling units with 0 registered voter, and to be precise, 240 polling units with 0 registered voter, which nobody is coming out to vote in those polling units. And at the same time, while you have that, you still have a lot of polling units in excess of thousands, who have that have above 1,000, and in fact, we have one polling unit in Nigeria with close to 11,000 registered voter, and that polling unit is in Kogi State. So, and then we also have polling units with over 5,000 registered voter, and why we have some polling units with less than 50, and at the same time 0 polling units. So, that cause for concern. So, in that report, we also try to look at the case of Osun and Ekiti, just concluded elections, where we try to analyze and let the management body, election management body, see the correlation in the polling units turnout and then the eventual turnout in the election. So what did we do? We look at the turnout in all the polling units in Osun and Ekiti, and then what we have discovered and we put in that report is that the lesser the number of people in the polling unit, then the higher the turnout. So we discovered that most of the polling units with less than 500 or less than 700 polling units had over 50% turnout, where most of the polling units with over 750 registered voter had less than 50% turnout. So what it means for us in this election is that the lesser the number of registered voter in the polling unit, the higher the turnout might likely be. And that is one of the things the data is saying. So again, to also look at the preparation of INEC, we are worried about, and the report states, we are worried about the preparation of INEC towards cyber attack in this election. So don't forget that this is the first time the election will be transmitted the election result will be transmitted electronically since 1999. So how prepared is INEC towards a cyber attack? How prepared is INEC towards their portal, being up and running? I know Nigerians will not want to get any excuse. We don't want to entertain any excuse that IREF, the result portal, is not working on that day, or because then we have too much crowd visiting the website or the platform. So if they need to expand their bandwidth, they need to do that now, and they need to do that and test most of this thing for its effectiveness. Again, we look at the PVC collection, and to our greatest surprise, we find out that some people have still not been able to collect their PVC, not because of the fault of theirs, but because INEC has couldn't print some of those cards. So we are still waiting for explanation. We are still waiting for their outcome for what INEC is going to say, because if eventually these people did not vote, then INEC has strategically or systematically disenfranchised these people that their card were not printed. And then looking at the case of insecurity, one of the things we have discovered is that this election is going to be conducted in the midst of insecurity, because almost all the regions in Nigeria are now one peculiar insecurity they are dealing with. For instance, in the northwest, you are dealing with banditry, kidnapping, and then in the northeast, the terrorists is there. In the north central, you have the issue of farmer header crisis and banditry too. You come to southeast, you have no gunmen, agitation, and the rest. So what we are trying to raise is that we are going into a peculiar election where the security agencies are going to be busy on two fronts. Number one, securing the country. Number two, securing the election. And we also know how tasking this could be to already near stressed security apparatus. And again, you will also recall that from 1999 till now, over 50 attacks has been on INEC offices, and which called for worry. And again, how prepared are we to foster reoccurrence? What is the implication of this in our election? So an INEC has been coming out to say, look, this is likely going to affect the election if this thing does not will not stop. So these are few of our concerns. And the lastly is the issue of election violence, and which we have seen that skyrocketed from the day of the month of where they had party primaries. At the same time, we have also, after the commencement of campaign, we have also seen a rise in the aspect of electoral violence since they started campaign. And we've also seen that look, most of the actors are just are political parties, and not the candidates themselves, but members of political parties. And the candidate has also had a part in some of these electoral violence brewing. So, and this is the first time, and people don't know that this is the first time we are having this magnitude of pre-election violent cases. Over now, as I'm talking to you now, there are over 400, and pre-election violence cases, which cause for concern. And again, we also look at how prepared is our judiciary for the election as it's coming. And so these are some of the things we highlighted in the reports.
All right. Okay, go ahead.
All right, Mr. Idowu, judging by all of these concerns that you've raised in this report, do you think that the INEC can still, honestly, do you think that the INEC can successfully pull off these elections without, all these concerns that you've raised, coming to bear?
Well, I think INEC we tried their best, but my hope, and I have tried to moderately downplay my hope for these elections. And not that the election will not hold, but in terms of having each free election, I can't say that 100%. And again, apart from some of the concern I've raised, you will have also seen the election pre-election atmosphere environment these days is number one. There is fuel scarcity, how that is going to affect INEC logistics is another concern already again. So and look at it, and we play this scenario like this. Just in my all the INEC need, according to INEC data, they need like about 100,000 vehicles for this election, and they need 4,000 boats for the election. That is aside motorcycle and aside motorcycle and the bicycle. So to be able to get to add to which places. So number one, so if you need to fuel 100,000 vehicles. So even if you're having what is it called, meeting with NNPC to allow the drivers to get fuel at the NNPC mega station. Don't forget that in some local government, for instance, I can give you example of Kogi, I can give you example of Niger, I can give you example of Taraba. Now these states, you have the distance between one local government, even at some point to the state headquarter capital in Taraba. I know the difference. The distance between Southern local government, which is Gebu, to Jalingo is close to 6 hours. So I don't know how you are going to drive 6 hours, because don't forget the NNPC mega station is not in all the local government. So these are the issues that you are looking at. Even if they make fuel available, then you now begin to face the issue where the NURTW, the driver people, come back to demand for more, and they are already doing that now. As I'm talking to you, they are already demanding for more. That look, as at the time we signed the MOU with you, this is the price of fuel. Now this is how much is being sold. Now can you please increase our money? That conversation is already going on, and we are not really sure if INEC even have provision for this in their budget. That is number one. Number two is the aspect of the logistics. We have, don't forget, in 2011 election was shifted, in 2015 election was shifted, in 2019 election was shifted, and those indices that caused us to shift election, they are still with us. In 2011 it was, and 2011 and 2019 it was the case of logistics. Now in 2015 it was a case of insecurity. Are we still having the insecurity today? Yes. Are we still having this issue of logistic challenge today? As we say, yes. So this is, and again you find out that even the active players in the election are already complaining, most especially in Lagos, that look, why are you going to work with MC Oluomo, a junior, and that this is a known APC member, and you now begin to ask yourself that, look, could it be that it is one, how will I put it? It is an arm of a political party that is also going to transmit and then distribute election material that they are going to participate in. So is that fairness? And that is what some people are saying. Of course, INEC has come out to say, look, we don't have an option to work with them. But for me and for us, I think they have an option. Lagos is a place that have a lot of logistic company. And of course, I don't want to start mentioning them online because of advert issue. But they have a lot of logistic companies in Lagos. And why is it that they can't even look the other way to some of these logistic company? Must we from 1999 be stuck with NURTW? Again, what happened to, and this is what happened since 1999. You will need vehicle. If we keep making provision of, for instance, we are going into this election, the INEC budget for this election is 305 billion naira. And so if we keep budgeting 1 billion every year or every election year to purchase vehicle, and from 1999 we should have everything we need. And so why this marriage with NURTW that at some point they disappoint you on election day? And so, of course, we are I mean, INEC the marriage is between them and they refuse to divorce. So we want to see how this will play. But for me, and again, what about some of the ad hoc staff, policemen, that they are going to be deployed, that most of them rely on cash to feed. Most of them rely on cash. I mean, some of these NURTW, some of them even are expected. I mean, in the past they'll be collecting cash, and except CBN is going to make special cash available for INEC. So when you look at some of these indices, then you have to moderately play down your hope for this election.
All right, Mr. Do, it's interesting that you should actually mention some of the agitations about the MC Oluomo-led park management in Lagos and some issues surrounding INEC neutrality. A couple of days ago on the internet, on Twitter particularly, the INEC official account actually liked a post by a media house that was reporting what someone said about a particular candidate. It was the Seun Kuti versus Peter Obi issue. You know, Seun Kuti calling Peter Obi an opportunist, and they liked that particular tweet, and it caused a lot of uproar. People saying that obviously INEC is tilting towards somewhere. They are reluctant to not look away from the MC Oluomo thing and some of these issues. Are you worried about the aspersions that have been cast on the integrity of INEC ahead of the elections?
Yes, let me say this did not start in this 2023 election, and I tell you, after 2019 election, there was a survey that was conducted by one international organization like that on the citizen perception on INEC, on INEC, and it will surprise you that majority of the respondents, let me just say that those that INEC is suffering from a lot of what we call a trust deficit. So if people are not trusting them now, it's not because it's just happening, and that is what we have been witnessing. Don't forget, and without holding brief for INEC, we work closely with them. We understand, but at times you seem not to just understand what exactly is going on. So the perception here is that look, INEC is not neutral, and what you expect an organization to start to do from 2019 is to begin to build confidence, begin to reassure Nigeria. And then you now have their social media handler making that kind of blunder, liking a partisan post, and that alone, even if you come like they have done, they have come out to make to release a statement. But again, some people will tell you, of course, that is just trying to do the damage control, and this is where it gets worse. So what if now the election will not go the way of the person criticized and that you liked? Then you are likely going to have an issue there that look, initially this man was not liked by INEC. And I give you an example. So some people have said it's likely we have a runoff in this election. So which means the election is not going to be determined by a simple majority. So what that means is that even if you have 12 million votes, and then the next person to you have like about 11 million votes, you are not likely going to be declared the winner if you don't have the constitutional spread that the constitution is. So just imagine the candidate that was criticized and INEC liked that tweet, have that 12 million votes, and then INEC is not declaring a runoff. Now, what about the people who are not aware of because another thing we have discovered is that majority of the people are not aware of the constitutional requirement for declaring the candidate. So many people also thought that it's going to be by simple majority. So these are the people that are likely going to go on street and begin to harass the citizen and begin to cause violence because they felt their citizen. They will feel that their candidate has been shortchanged. So that was a bit overzealous from the handler, if you ask me. Signing, and they need to come out repeatedly to assure Nigeria, not just one statement this time around. They need to appear on as many TV stations as possible. They need to reassure Nigerians, possibly, and they need to also tender apology for that. No matter who is responsible for the social media handling, they need to take responsibility and reassure Nigeria, or else the toga of partisanship is already hanging on INEC.
So before we begin to round off the show now, you've spoken extensively about violence, about some of the issues, but let's look at the conduct of the candidates themselves. According to your partner at that event where your report was launched, the country director of the International Republican Institute, Santiago Soca, was saying something about, since the signing of the peace accord by the presidential candidate in September, there have been more than 100 incidents of election violence in more than 30 states and more than 80 local government. In this age and time, seeing how heated and animated Nigerians are at this moment, what is the place of peace accords, and why do candidates not stick to them, and what are the implications for elections?
Well, fortunately, I was looking at the first report of the Peace Committee before coming on here, and of course they release a report and then analyze some of the area that the candidates and their spokesperson have breached the peace accord signing. So it's very, very instructive. But at the same time, this is what I have seen. You know, it looks like most of these candidates are not adhering, or political party are not sticking to the signing of the peace accord. And do you know one of the reasons? And this is one thing you need to really look at in Nigeria. You see, the peace committee, one thing you need to understand about the peace committee is that the peace committee is not a constitutional body. And so the only thing they have is just moral suasion. It's just a committee that is not recognized by the constitution of this country, and they don't even have punitive power. So if you breach it, can they punish you? Can they take you to court? No. These are just gathering of elders, respected citizens, to use their moral situation to encourage the people to stick to peace. So when the people flout that, then what happened? And so the conversation now is that should we be looking at giving this committee a constitutional responsibility, legal backing, that look, even if you breach it and it's established that you breach this, then you can be punished because you signed to it. But this time around, people signed to it because it's and the only thing the committee is doing is just to now begin to say, look, put the moral burden on the candidate and say, look, you are not someone that is that can be trusted because you signed something, you signed an accord, you are doing exactly the opposite. And how many of them are also bothered by that? So the peace accord is not fully effective because I think in my own view, they need a legal backing to be able to punish, to be able to go on radio and name and shame, to be able to arrest, to be able to put people in court, or maybe when the Election Affairs Commission come in full force after 2023 election, maybe we will see a reduction. If you sign the peace accord and then you breach it, then maybe there will be a synergy. But as it is now, that committee are just signing, but they don't have legal power to really enforce anything.
All right. So before we let you go, what should be done between now and February 25th to ensure smooth, free, fair, and credible elections?
INEC should not be ashamed to have some more budget from the federal government now, and I'm telling you what I know. They should not be ashamed. They need more money. They should ask, because this is peculiar time by me. This time is not is peculiar. Let me put it that way. So number two is to tighten the what is called the logistic arm election administration of INEC. because people are coming out to vote and they don't want to hear stories. Number two is to start now retraining of the ad hoc staff, because people don't want to hear that after we have voted, somebody is saying there is overvoting anywhere. They need to begin to take a showcase now, take it to the classroom for the ad hoc staff and say, look, this is exactly, if you have been doing the theory, do the practical for them now. And that is one thing that we need to do. And again, now, everybody, including INEC, they need to partner with the judiciary now and train them, because it looks like some of the judges are not fully abreast and they don't have full understanding of the electoral act. And it will surprise you, because these are people over the years have been doing what we call, I've been sitting on criminal and civil cases. Election is not neither criminal nor civil. And so what we have seen is that it's just last month, some of these judges have been trained. So you are just training somebody who have been sitting on civil and criminal cases just few weeks to the election. They need to do more retraining within this little time and come up with possible scenario that they might likely have to meet at the election petition tribunal. Again, going back to INEC, they need to tighten cyber defense around their server, around everything. So this election for you to go smoothly. And lastly, I want to say the security agencies must roll out their sleeve, because they are going to have their hands full. But the most important thing is that they have to be neutral in this election. Like I keep saying, they are Nigerian police, not APC or PDP police. So they have to be neutral. And lastly of the last, let me say, the president must show the people that is interested in free and fair elections. We want to see body language that speaks to that, not just speaking something and your body language is saying another thing. Then the only legacy the president can give us is free and fair election. And I think that is what is needed now. All stakeholders, the election is a few weeks away, all stakeholders must join hands together so that we can have a very smooth election, because we need it at this time.
Thank you very much, Mr. Bukola Idowu, the Executive Director of Kimpact Development Initiative, for your insightful position on the issues surrounding next 2 weeks now, 2 weeks and a day election here in Nigeria. Thank you so much for your time on the show this morning.
Thank you for having me.
Well, that's the interview segment of the program. I'll be coming back with Spring Trends to tell you who, what, and when, and why, and where, and who is trending.
And I'll be leaving you with a word to stay safe out there this morning. Have a wonderful day. I'm Temitope Ajitololuola.